What's going on, guys? Coach Lane here with my partners, Cameron Hockaday and Kelvin Lamb. We are Coaches Camp, and welcome once again to the Coaches Camp podcast. How you guys doing today?
Good.
You can't complain.
Can't complain. Well, we got a full slate today. We're going to be talking about coaching through the crossover season. And you guys, if you're listening to this, please let us know what you thought of the first episode, what you think of this one, how you guys can keep this conversation going afterwards is by talking to each other. So let us know what you think, but also tell other people from the community what you thought as well. So coaching through the crossover season, fall means Friday night lights, guys. It means pep rallies. It means packed stands. But for competitive cheer coaches, it also means a bunch of other stuff, right? Choreography, routine cleanup, and early season stunting jitters. Kelvin, we're looking at you here. Today, we're breaking down how to juggle both worlds without burning out your athletes or yourself. I think this is a huge topic. I'm so glad we're talking about this because we all see it in different capacities. When we start the competition season, we start seeing frustrations getting high and energy getting lower, and that shutdown, that overwhelm kind of taking over. So our outline for today, you guys, are what the things that we're talking points that we're going to be talking about. Setting the stage, the unique demands of fall cheer, football season sideline strategy, competition prep in the middle of football season, which I think is going to be huge. Balancing both without losing momentum. I sense a lot of mindset talk that's going to be coming in our future. Some common mistakes that coaches can make in the fall, and then we're going to do our best to give you our pro tips and takeaways throughout the rest of the episode. So let's jump off right now. All right, so when we're talking about setting the stage, right, the unique demands of fall cheer, and I think that's a great phrase, the unique demands, because it's a vibe, right? Like fall is a vibe when it comes to football, when it comes to competition cheer, when it comes to sideline, when it comes to choreo. Like, it's that time of year that you always remember, and you can definitely sense its presence. It makes me think of the idea of like having two worlds, one team, right? You have sideline obligations and you have competition readiness. Cameron, do you think you could speak to that? Like, what are the different kind of demands that you're facing as a fall cheer coach when it comes to sideline and when it comes to competition readiness?
Yeah, this is I think a challenge that people feel, I'm sure, across the United States. With if your high school does compete, you are really balancing. Sometimes it is literally two different teams. Like it's not always the same exact athletes, but you're balancing two worlds that hopefully you want to devote yourself to equally. I think sometimes it is easy for us, especially highly competitive programs or programs that are wanting to build competition, to kind of put the school sideline on the back burner. But I think also we forget that one, our job as cheerleaders started on the sideline to help foster a great engaging environment for games. And then two, from the aspect of just investing in our kids and touching on the burnout you talked about, we forget how much our kids love sideline cheerleading, the bus rides, the being with their peers, the performing in that element. So I think it's important to give that its due and to make sure we're creating a great environment, not only for the school by enhancing it as cheerleaders, but also to intentionally create times during something that can be something they really enjoy without that competitive pressure. And really kind of honing those worlds to where you can create balance within the things you're required to do already.
I like that because I think it's important for us just in life to find balance in the things that we do. But I think that it's important when because coaches aren't just cheer coaches, right? They're moms, they're wives, they have jobs, they have other obligations. And so
Yeah.
it's really easy to get stuck where you're just like, okay, so now it's 3:30. What are we doing for cheer today? Or what are we doing this week? Or what do we have to prepare for next month? And you tend to lose the opportunity to strike a balance, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important, like you were saying, to find balance where you can, because a little bit of balance here and there is going to really pay off in the future. Kelvin, go ahead.
Well, I mean, balance is one thing, but I think, Cameron, you touched on something really important, is that it's about the priority of things. And you mentioned your your purpose. I think you mentioned your purpose. If you said something different, I heard it and I thought purpose. And
You
the
got it.
original the original purpose of cheerleading was for ball games. Um,
Mhm.
and here's the thing. I know, we all know, and you as a listener, as a coach, probably also know this too, because of, you get the sense that your cheerleaders want, love, and live for the competition side of things. But the school probably doesn't care that much
Yeah.
about the competition side of things. They care that you're doing a great job at the games. They care that you are enhancing the game day experience. They care that you are adding to the fanfare
Yeah.
of game day. And so when it comes to that, you do have to prioritize. If you want the support from the administration, if you want the support from your student body, fellow student athletes, you need to prioritize the game day experience,
Mhm.
and not just looking good performing on game day, but
Yeah.
actually interacting with that audience and creating that experience for them,
Yeah.
not just putting on a show, which I fear I may have kind of did a little bit of a spoiler into subtopics moving forward. But that's philosophically, that's where I will always operate from if I am coaching a school team. And from experience, operating from that perspective and from that type of prioritization has actually gotten me more yeses when I would have requests than nos.
Yeah, because you don't want a team that's just, we've talked about this before, on our social media and things that we put out before, guys. We've talked about this before, where it's like you don't want a team that's just showing up, kind of like you said, Kelvin, kind of putting on a show, for a very loose analogy, and then taking off. Like, you want athletes who are showcasing their school pride, but you're also fulfilling the role historically that cheerleading or crowd leading has been put in place to do, which is to lead the crowd, enhance the spirit, the school
Mhm.
spirit of the event, and really make people feel connected, feel like a tribe, feel community, or feel like that sense of
Yeah.
community from your performance, or from your effort. So I think that's huge.
Well, actually, real
Go
quick,
ahead.
just to kind of zoom in on a couple of things that you said there.
Yeah.
You know, what do we hear from coaches a lot? Like, as far as questions or challenges, we hear, how do I get my athletes to perform better? How do I get my athletes to do better facials? How do I get my athletes to project? How do I get, all these different things? I think it does stem back to that purpose of how do we make an impact while interacting with the audience? Because if you have if you're not projecting enough, the crowd can't hear you, so then they're not going to yell back. So then you use that as your barometer, right? You use that as your measuring stick. Did the crowd yell back or not? Did they follow or not? Oh, maybe they didn't hear me, let me try louder. Maybe the chant I used was too complex, it's not simple enough. Maybe, all these different things. And then you start tackling those other challenges that coaches run into later on when they're trying to clean their routine up
Yeah.
with that performance factor and all these different things. It ends up, I mean, when you talk about balance, that ends up solving your issues for you.
Yeah, I think we'll get into this, but there is a lot that you can do to intermingle both of them to help facilitate both things getting better. I think they both have different priorities, as Kelvin stated, and you have to look at it like that and make sure you are prioritizing your role with each. But there are things from each that you can use to complement each other. And I think the big, maybe overall theme during all this is, from a coaching standpoint, we need to work smarter and not harder when trying to avoid the burnout for our athletes. And because you can't be firing on all cylinders all of the time and being great at everything all at once, if you only throw yourself into one thing. But if you kind of look at the holistic picture and say, how can I work these together to complement each other? What are my priorities when hitting each of these? My priorities are probably not looking the way I'm going to look at a competition on the sideline track. Yes,
Mm,
do I want to look professional? Of course. But do I need that barrier of there's a score sheet and I'm a performer? Or do I need to break down that barrier and let my kids learn to interact and then actually engage with a crowd?
great point. That's a mistake I've made before when helping sideline, because coming in to help them clean up other things, I came from that performance standpoint where it's like,
Hmm.
hey, this is a good opportunity for you to practice the things that you struggle with for your, on the score sheet. Is it the facials?
Hmm.
Is it having fun during the performance? Is it, the cleanliness, or so that's a good point, is like making that distinction.
Well, and the weird thing about that is that sometimes when it's too clean and too choreographed, the crowd does not follow.
Yeah, it
They feel
doesn't
like
Yeah.
they're
feel authentic.
watching a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, Cameron, what are those priorities? Do I need to be doing this or that? And let's face it, a lot of the times coaches get, at least from what I've seen and what I learned in my own experience also, is that coaches tend to get too fixated historically based off of their experience, um, too fixated on, we have to have X number of chants.
Yeah.
We have to have a different chant being called every single
Right.
opportunity or whatever. And really, you think about that, and the crowd really only yells with like four.
And we
If
have to
that.
So
teach all of these
yeah,
chants before football season and
yeah,
take
yeah.
so much
Yeah.
time to teach all the material, but we have to practice competition skills. And yeah, that
Right. So you
snowballs.
can get rid of a lot of those things,
Hmm.
stick with the ones the crowd yells with, and then just get really good at knowing when to start, when to stop.
Hmm.
Uh, You
Seriously.
know, th- all right. Anyway, sorry, Lane. You wanted to jump to the next bullet point.
Yeah.
No, that was good. No, we talked about the mental load, or the emotional load that it can, weigh on the coaches, but just quick 2 cents from you guys. What kind of, in your experience, what kind of mental load does this put on the athletes during this crossover season?
I can maybe start. It definitely, and I don't know if I addressed it enough. It can be such a mental load on the coaches of everything that a coach handles. And I think that's what we can speak to help to as our audience. But it is important to remember the load on the athletes and that they are student athletes first, and that we
Mm,
are developing hopefully just humans that can better handle their lives and be better members of society once they leave us. So I try to keep that layer in mind when I'm making difficult decisions throughout this season that is so overloaded. And I have this meeting and this practice and this conflict, and we need extra practice because of the, I try to let that guide some of those decisions, to help keep me in the clear, to where I don't completely veer off into I am a competition coach only or something like that, or your only job is a cheerleader and you have to be present for this. I have to remember they're a student athlete who I'm developing in an athletic setting to hopefully, be a better, more capable human handling their life. I think the mental load for the athletes, to be honest, in my experience, I should say, it doesn't really start wearing on them until basketball season. There's
mm,
so much excitement for them in the beginning of the year, like seeing their friends again, Friday night lights, like new choreography. And then once all of that starts to get out of the honeymoon phase toward the end of football season, going into playoffs, whatever it might be, that's when that grind can really start to build up for the kids. But I think from the start, it can be overwhelming for them to juggle all these things, especially the younger kids in the program that haven't experienced, like if they're maybe coming from a non competitive program and then they're, or just a program that's different than yours, they're making big transitions, like to a high school team or to a middle school team from whatever they've done before. So it is really important to help guide those younger ones through the process and make sure that they have the tools and capabilities for time management, understand when they should be reaching out to help for their teachers. We would have certain GPA averages that if the kids, it wasn't what was required by our school, ours were higher, so that we
mhm.
could catch them before they fell. So if they fell below our standards, we were implementing plan before they ever got to the standard to where they couldn't participate in athletics. And some of those type of things would help keep our kids on track, and then we could make decisions to kind of help them handle everything and make a plan for making it through that long-term season as things start to build up.
Yeah, I think what you said, Cameron, is probably a bit more accurate as far as when the athletes start to feel overwhelmed. And I think it tends to coincide with basketball season because that's when there's either midterms or finals.
Mhm.
And so
And national prep. Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's a good point. Great point.
Yeah, we can still
Yeah,
hear you,
there's
and
a little
hopefully on
lag.
your end, it's still recording locally. It's probably just having trouble streaming for sure.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think that's huge because we talked about before how stress is biologically, biochemically contagious, right? And as your cortisol levels increase, stress is going to trickle down from whoever is the leader or the alpha in the situation, whether that's your stunt pod or it's your coach or it's your captain, your team captains. It's going to trickle down. So if they're feeling that stress or you're feeling that stress as the coach, try to hide it as you may, you're coming into a situation and you're definitely sharing that with the kids. But I think this is a good point to move on to football season sideline strategy and start where you guys have already left off, which is avoiding burnout. What are some energy management strategies coaches can implement between Friday night games, weekend practices, midweek choreo? This is one that always messes up my flow, right? Coming in as a tumbling instructor, I get the last pick on their schedule for days and availabilities, right? And it's usually, oh, well, we can squeeze you in on a Tuesday or Thursday night. Wednesdays are really important because that's the day we figure out what's going to be happening for Friday or Saturday. And so they have to, they have to change their halftime. And we've talked about this too, like always constantly changing your routine for every halftime practice or performance. But yeah, so like midweek practices. But like, what's a good energy management strategy between, let's just say this, between Friday Night Lights, competitions, and everything else, every other day of the week?
well, I think one major thing that coaches need to do is okay, here's what tends to happen, right? Coaches will set a timeline based off of the calendar and the calendar's needs. And then they go, okay, if I work backwards, I need this by this time, et cetera, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. What a lot of coaches then don't also do is go at that timeline the other way as well to make sure that they are readjusting the expectations for said date or whatever needs to happen. When you do that, then it's a little bit more thinking that has to go into it. But then what ends up happening is you go, okay, I work backwards. I need to have this, let's use your example, halftime routine for this weekend done by this time. Okay. And then If you just go by that and you're just kind of forcing your way through, then you're really stressed out going, hey, I need everybody to learn this by this time. So now you're assigning homework to your athletes, right, to get something by a certain time. And now they're stressed out because now I got homework for cheer as well as my homework, and then I got to study for my test, right? So what instead, if we go, okay, I need my halftime routine for this upcoming weekend by this time. Okay, cool. Working backwards. That means I need this part of the routine done by this time, whatever. We're working forwards to now. Okay, it is now Wednesday. We got this much of the routine clean. Guess what? It's totally okay as a coach to go, good enough. Let's get this better. Let's just clean this part up and just perform this much.
Yes.
All right, done.
Good and done is better than perfect and unfinished.
Well, not only, yeah. And then just tack on a cheer that you already know, or like, and end the routine with a chant to get the crowd going. End in a stunt, call it a day. Go take a break, ladies. Go take off your proverbial Mickey Mouse head and relax behind the curtain where nobody else can see you. Have a snack. Like that way you're coaching to the competency of the athlete's current state instead of forcing them to expand their capacity and grow, like beyond, or forcing them to grow beyond their capacity at that moment. So then because that's where you get burnout, is when you're forcing someone, even yourself included, to be able to contain more than your current capacity allows.
I think that's a great place to actually move on to this next point, which is something I think you can speak to a lot, Cameron, which is scheduling realities, right? And you guys, by the way, we have other points that we'd love to get to. And if we run out of time, then what we'll do is include those in the show notes. We'll make a downloadable document where you guys can go through and see the other topics that we had in mind. And maybe we'll go ahead and add our 2 cents to those topics for you guys to download after the fact. But scheduling realities, like fitting full out practices around football, around pep rallies, and then I think you guys already talked about this too. If we're speaking under the main point of competition prep in the middle of football season, you guys also kind of talked about the mindset. Like, when is it appropriate to have competition mindset turned on, and then maybe just have a game day mode that you're turned on, right? Maybe not being competition mindset during game mode. Like, maybe you guys can speak on both scheduling realities and then the mindset for our athletes.
I'll start with maybe some of the more practical, like scheduling realities. And it kind of touches on what Kelvin is saying, is that you have to be able to work backwards and forwards. Obviously, backwards from competition dates to choreography, to say, okay, we practice this many days a week. I have this much practice time. Here's what I need to block schedule to get done by then. But then revisiting and assessing, where are we in relation to being able to perform this? And do I need to make adjustments to where we can successfully perform? As far as like a weekly schedule to handle everything, we had cheerleading as a part of our class schedule, which meant as the coaches, we did not have a planning period, which adds to the own coaches like overwhelm. And then our class period would then go after school. So we had a long practice that started in school, lasted after school, but we would split up the week. Let's say if it was a year we were doing both traditional and game day, we would practice, traditional on Monday and Wednesday. That Wednesday would be combined with our tumbling day. So that way, as our tumbling class was there, if we wanted to spend a portion of that as we got further into season on having our tumbling coach help us work cleaning the group tumbling section, or making individual suggestions to kids based on what they had in the routine versus what they were working the front half of the season just on their own in tumbling class. That was kind of a combined day. Maybe Tuesday and Thursday are your game day practices. Friday for us would be it's a shorter practice because we have a game, but we would just pull out maybe like 4 mats or something, not all the mats, have them work some skills in pods to see, okay, where are we individually with these skill sets? Who needs to work their elites? Do we need to try a plan B? Like Friday's a great day to start working alternate plans. It's just that kind of flex day. And then obviously ball game prep. we would have our kids know exactly what to expect at a ball game as well. So at those Friday practices, we would start establishing when there's a quarter change, meaning there's dead time at a game, these are the 4 options we will be doing, and like 2 of them might be loose, like a running tumbling line or a standing tumbling line, jump section, something like that. 2 or 3 of them might be it's this cheer that you involve the crowd in with these signs, or it's this color war. So they kind of knew the rest of football season, here's like our menu for this. And if somebody was out that day, that Friday practice, we would work changing the formation, stuff like that. So it was a flex day. And then within that, you still need to have a schedule for the actual practice. Also, you might have to cut a game day practice in half because you're planning your pep rally performance. So you plan out that practice and you have to stick to your schedule. So you might be working your traditional routine and you're like, man, this jump into the pyramid is just a hot mess. But your goal that day was to clean a portion of the dance. But all you want to do is fix the pyramid issue. If your goal was to clean the dance, you've got to save the pyramid for another time and not get caught up in it. Even though you know you're capable of cleaning it, that's not what your schedule said to get you where you want to be. So just because you're capable of handling it, it's not your schedule. So if you never clean that dance, you're going to end up, if that's where your priority is, you're going to end up with a dance that never gets clean because you always push it to the back burner, that type of thing. So being on top of yourself as a coach to follow the schedule is very helpful to kind of maintain everything that's going on. And then just like I alluded to before, if you do have that pep rally and y'all have a million pep rallies, think outside the box. You don't have to perform every time. I know when we took over our program, that was the mindset of it's a performance, like the cheerleaders perform, the dancers perform. But we shifted it into more of an interactive thing, which actually took a lot of pressure off of us. We no longer had to perform every time. One, let the dancers perform this week. Two, let's have a crowd cheer. We do every single pep rally where we would have who can be the loudest repeating this cheer from all the sections. They knew it was coming every pep rally. The winner got to run the flag out at the ball game. That was very easy for us once it was established, and it's not something we had to practice for, these crowd cheers. And then 2, play a game with your student body instead of, again, cleaning a performance for them. Get them involved. It's more of your job as what you're supposed to be doing anyway, of making something school related fun by bringing the teachers and students to play some sort of crazy game versus performing for them. So I think you're doing a better job by cutting some of those performances. And then flip it at the ball games. Use some of that time to say, hey, we're going to do this version of your elites during when the band plays. Like, instead of our band dance this week, I want to see you throw up some of these stunts that are safe to get used to doing them in front of a crowd. So we were always using ball games for performance practice, but in a way that made sense to also elevate what's going on in the ball game. The band is going to play not during while the game is going on. It'll be a time that's appropriate. So I'll pause there, but that's kind of how we handled that.
Yeah, and honestly, I know every program is going to be different as far as the quantity, the head count on your team, like the number of cheerleaders you actually have. But here's a really big reason why a lot of schools, programs allow for the coaches to take such a high head count. It's not because the competitions go, hey, there's this many in this category, this many in this division, this many in this division. That's not the reason why. The reason why is so that you can distribute the workload and be able to handle all those things. And I'll give 2 examples here that hopefully kind of inspire your creativity as a coach on how you want to run your program. I'll give it to you from the when I was an athlete perspective, and then I'll give it to you from when I was coaching perspective. When I was an athlete, the hardest time of the season was finals, football, volleyball, basketball, and bowl game season. Like, when all those things hit all at the same time. And so what we did was we divided our team up into subgroups so that we could take on those different challenges. So that not every cheerleader had to be at the same place at the same time. Now, mind you, that's as a college athlete, but there's no reason why as a high school cheerleading program, you couldn't also divide up your team into
We
groups.
did that
And
as
so,
well.
yeah. And so here's, so that was as an athlete. Now, as a coach, here's how I did that, right? I tried to take enough. I think it might have been 28, maybe something like that. But either way, I was able to divide up my team into halves, thirds, and fourths. And so how I would decide the quantity of cheerleaders to have at any given event was directly correlated to the audience size. So the size of the crowd at whatever event. So football game, largest event, everybody's there, right? Men's basketball. Now, this is hard because you're going to get people that challenge you on, Title IX, gender equity, and all this stuff, but it has nothing to do with the gender of the team that's competing. It has everything to do with the size of the crowd at the game. So men's basketball, we divided into halves, and we would have each half take alternate weekends, right? Because that basketball crowd was pretty big. With women's basketball, we would divide into thirds. Because that's how big the attendance was. Had nothing to do with the gender of the team competing that weekend. All right. And then for different appearances, if it was like at, some restaurant, you can't fit that many people between tables anyhow. So we go into fourths and we do that. Or if it was a pep rally, it might be thirds, it might be halves, depending on the size of the pep rally. But to add on to what Cameron said, flipping that switch into crowd interaction saves you a bunch, because then what you can do is you can have a set formula. Instead of creating a new routine dance with formations and formation changes every pep rally, you have a format. Maybe it is open up with fight song. Okay. And then maybe it goes into a t-shirt toss. And then it goes into a spell out or whatever traditional cheer that the crowd would follow along with. And then you end with a band chant or a band dance that you perform consistently at games, especially if you have a band there to play, or just, typically the band would be more than happy to record a song that they typically play, and you can just do it canned music style. And then you call it a day and you chant as you exit. So chant on, fight song, t-shirt toss, spell out, band dance, chant off, done. And then your formation is 2 lines with windows where the group is near or the cheerleaders are near their stunt groups. And so they can put up stunts if there's room for stunts. But that way, it doesn't matter who's there, because it's easy to make 2 lines where people are closer to stunt groups. Or if you have somebody that has to be absent, even though they were assigned to that date, they call in a sub for the same position, bada bing, bada boom, dunzo, call it a day.
I like that because we're speaking on overloading athletes with double intensity. We're speaking on overwhelm, and this is a great way to relieve that. You have your different strings essentially, that are coming in. They're subbing for each other. They're sharing the workload. They're not getting overwhelmed. I think that's a great idea. That's a great takeaway. We are nearing the end of our second episode here, and you guys, like I said, we're going to include show notes for the first and second episodes so that you guys can read along, or kind of get a little extra tidbit here and there. But pro tips and takeaways from today's episode, I really just want to touch on this last thing with you guys really quick. There's a thought that I had. Both roles, spirit leader and competitor, both build the program's not just their reputation, but also the strength of the team is built right through the spirit leader, through the competitor, through the coach. What are some final thoughts that you guys can give, pro tip takeaways on avoiding overwhelm, maintaining I don't want to dive into mindset because that's a whole different episode, but maintaining a positive culture throughout this very hectic season? What is one tip that you would give both the coach and the athlete?
That how you do anything is how you do everything. And so, I don't think there's a difference between game day or ball game mindset, cheerleader, crowd leading mindset, and competition mindset. I know you said, Lane, that you didn't want to get into myself, but like that was
No, I
part of the
think it's
question
good to
from
touch on.
before. It's not any different. It's
Mm.
just how you do anything is how you do everything. So you teach your athletes how to pay attention, be focused, be in the moment, do the best they can in that moment. Whether it's do the best you can at leading this crowd right now, or do the best you can at executing this trick. It does not change. So it's not like, oh, let me really focus and be really sharp and hit my skills when it's competition routine time. No, it's the same. You don't treat your game day stunts with less intensity, focus, care, and precision than you do with your competition ones, right? It's the same. And then you just operate at that level consistently. You don't demand more of your competition execution, or you don't demand more of your athletes for a competition than you do for game day, because now you're asking them to operate at a level. You're asking them, let's use a car analogy, to operate at a higher RPM. Now you're asking them to redline for competition when really they're used to operating at a 30,000 RPM or whatever. Like, you just got to keep it consistent, or you're just going to burn gas, and that's where you burn out.
And I think that too, that prevents the athletes from misinterpreting the assignment, right? From them thinking, oh, well, now that it's competition, I have to be more, or they're doing anything that hasn't already been a part of their everyday practice or mindset. And I think that a lot of athletes get overwhelmed when it does come time to compete or it does come time to perform. And I think, to your point, Kelvin, you're simply saying practice the, I don't want to say practice the way you're going to perform, but yeah, essentially, you want to make it an everyday practice how you plan to be whenever you're out there doing your job as the performing athlete, right?
Yes. On top of that, this is like, as a coach, this is your opportunity as a coach to train your athletes to be the best version of themselves no matter what arena they are in, right? It's not just game day competition. It's do the same thing with your homework, do the same thing in school, do the same thing when interacting with your family in family gatherings. You just operate at that level. That's just, now you're training yourself to be who you are or who you want to be all the time. And it's a much bigger picture, higher level thing, but that's what we're called to do as coaches, because as a coach, we, for whatever reason, can connect with our athletes in a way that their parents are unable to.
Yeah.
And so that responsibility falls on us, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a parent, you know this. You're like, man, I've been telling you this,
Right.
whatever. And then your coach says it one time. Okay, fine. Coach, you deliver that message.
Yeah.
So that, that's our fiduciary responsibility now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameron, what is your final pro tip takeaway for this, for
Yeah.
the roles and maintaining the program's reputation and building up the team culture throughout this hectic season of life and sport?
Yeah, I think mine comes a little bit from more of my personal experience and what I needed to do to balance this. I am very competition minded and very standard focused, and holding my kids to a very high standard with everything that they do. What I struggle with is having fun with the kids. And so it was important for me to recognize that games, the football games, the whatever, the pep rallies, were often the place that I could and my kids needed to be able to have the freedom to have some fun. That doesn't mean we fall on the floor trying stupid stuff, but that does mean, hey, I can relax a little bit and I can teach my kids that this is where we can interact and connect with people versus the performance pressure. And if there's some theme and there's a way for them to participate, but it means they can't wear their hair exactly how I want it, let them participate. Just things like that. Let them really be a part of their school community from a coach's perspective, who is probably errs to the side of competition, workout, strength, skills, conditioning, I really try to embrace what I can bring for the kids to enjoy their sport through the interaction and connection that they can get from the sideline leading. So I really try to tap into that so that they don't get burnout and I can see them enjoying it, and I can kind of pump the brakes on myself too and watch them enjoy cheering for a ball game.
Man, I wish
Love
we
that.
had more time. I wish we had more time because what you just said is so important because ball games are supposed to be fun. They're
Yeah.
supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And I had the experience of cheering in high school when cheering ball games were not fun because whether the actual team playing the game, the sport sucked, or we just didn't know what we were doing. And so then we were not enhancing that experience.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so then that didn't feel fun. And then I got to cheer on a team and 4 teams that were good or just in a format that allowed me to have fun. Like got a first down, put a stunt up, high five the crowd.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's so
That
fun.
was fun.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to have fun until I got into that type of an environment. So
Yeah.
teaching our kids how to have fun in that environment, and utilizing that time to practice those skills, but not in a practice sense, but like performing it because it's fun to perform the trick and then get attention, having fun getting the attention from the crowd because of it. It's a different, it's such a different experience once you figure that part out. And sometimes you need guidance on that. So if you want to drop questions on how to do that or what that might look like, drop the questions in the comment section or DM us, me, whatever. Let's have that conversation because oh my gosh, I get so passionate about game day because that is where cheerleading can also be fun on top of just competition. You don't get to get that rush.
Giving your athletes that agency, but that's something that has to be taught, like you both are putting it has to become a part of your practice to give your athletes that agency and that responsibility for them to choose, because like tossing up a stunt after a first down or a touchdown, that's great. And what if that stunt falls? That's great. Like give them that opportunity to fail publicly as well, because that's only going to enhance their performance and their problem solving skills, being able to adapt in the moment when it does come competition time, because as we all know, not everything goes the way that you planned when you are competing. So I think that's really good. You guys, look, here's our wrap up, and this is encouragement to all of you coaches that are listening. And by the way, if you've listened this far, please share your own sideline competition balance strategies with us, and maybe let us know something you'd like to hear us talk about in a future episode. But I want to leave you guys with this: you can crush both seasons. Just remember, preparation and communication will win every single time. Kelvin, Cameron, thank you guys so much for every ounce of knowledge and wisdom that you guys. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.